Hey y'all, it's me, Sonja, and we're back again with another video. We are breaking down the steps to intentional living. Last week we talked about living by principle. We talked about that GPS principle, right? Figuring out where we are and where we want to go. And now today we're talking about the second step. We're talking about executing by process and how this step closes the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And we're going to figure out how we're going to operationalize that, how we're going to put that all together, okay? Now, before I get into all of that, I would love to introduce myself formally. Hey, y'all, my name is Sonja of SonjaWCoaching, where we help overwhelmed, multi-passionate women learn how to, oh my gosh, live by principle, execute by process, and win by principle. And we do all of that by first making sure that you acknowledge that you have a dream, that's been placed inside of you to transform this world. And get this, we help you figure out how to make that dream meet reality, okay? So now let's get back to it. Let's get into how we're going to take your responses in the living by principle section of figuring out where you are and figuring out where you want to be and close that gap. Now, remember we talked about the GPS, right? We talked about how intentional living is kind of like the intentional living process kind of starts with like loading your GPS, right? When we're living by principle, we're figuring out where we are, and then we're figuring out where we want to go, right? That is just like a GPS. We know where we are and we plug in where we want to go. Well, executing by process is kind of like finding the best route to actually moving from where you are to where you want to go. Or what I like to say all the time is closing the gap between the two. Now, it is so key and so important to what you're doing. And that gap closing mechanism is really goals and routines. Now, I have a bunch of videos on my channel already all about goal setting and routine building and the importance of it and what it is and all that kind of stuff. And I'll go ahead and link the playlist below. But the key to all of this is that, yes, you got your routines, you got your goals, but there's something right before writing that perfect goal or setting up that perfect routine that I want to hit on. And that's the idea of closing the gap, okay? Now, this is going to be a quick video because I ain't got much to say about this one. This one is pretty key, but it ain't that detailed. It's not that deep, okay? And there are going to be two main things that you need to do to try to make sure that you are closing that gap, okay? So, number one was three things. Did I say two things? I don't remember what I said, but there's three things. There's three of them, all right? So, number one, if you follow me, you already know about the 6 key relationships. The key to all of this is that you got to make sure that you establish those two main questions in each one of those relationships. Go through those relationships and figure out where you are and where you want to go. The 6 key relationships, again, are God, your health, your mind, your family, your friends, and your finances. Establish where you are and where you want to go in each one of those areas. Then the next step to making sure that you close the gap is to actually write down 2 or 3 things in each one of those relationships that you believe will help you close the gap. Perhaps in your relationship with God, you may read the Bible, because you know that reading the Bible, you're going to increase your relationship with God, right? Or perhaps in your health, you would write work out 3 times a week, or workout. You wouldn't even get that detail. You just write work out regularly. Or perhaps with the finances, when you say finally write a budget. That's the type of detail. Like, you're not trying to stress yourself out. You're just coming up with the first few things that you figure will help you grow in that area. And then the final thing is to actually look at all of those 6 relationships and only pick 2 or 3 things out of all of them that you're going to focus on now. Now, that is really, really scary to do, because a lot of times people are always like, oh, I got about 30 goals that I want to hit this year. Listen, now I'm not going to say you can't hit it. I'm not going to say you can't. But what I am going to say is that you probably won't. And the reason why is because it's just too much. You have life to live. So it's really important to just focus on 1 to 2 really important things, or 2 to 3 really important things for your life. If you actually follow me, then you already know I live by the principle or the idea of only working on 2 to 3 goals a quarter. Sometimes really I lean towards just 2, because with the rest of your life, you got all these other things going on, and then to have to add new things to your life can be quite stressful. So it's important to only do those 2 to 3 things. And now that you have set up those things in your life, you've looked at your 6 relationships, you've written down a couple of things that you think you can do to close that gap, and you pulled out 2 to 3 total that you want to focus on in this season. Now we're cooking with grease. We're making moves in this intentional living journey. Now, next week, I'm going to talk about the major key to executing by process. Now, I talked about executing by process and setting up the things that are going to close the gap, right? And then I got plenty of videos about goals and routines, and I'll link some of them above, or maybe I'll put a few below. But there's one key. There is one major key that you must include in your life to make sure that you're executing by process well, and that you're actually being intentional about your life. And I'll break that down next week for you, okay? So listen, if you want to figure out how to really build out your life plan and build out these relationships and figure out what are the next best steps to close the gap to find the best route to your dreams, then holler at me. Go ahead and set up some time with me. You can check out the free discovery call down below, and we can set up some time just to figure out what's the best next step for you, okay? And in the meantime, go ahead and subscribe so you can get that video next week when it drops. It's going to drop every Thursday, okay? Every Thursday. If you know you're from Baltimore, then you know. Every Thursday. I'm sorry. Sometimes that's definitely not in the script. But anyway, I really truly have that. I hope that you have an awesome week, that this is helpful for you, and that you're well on your way to intentionally living out each one of your days. Have a great day wherever you are.